Eugenie, I'm so happy to see you. It's really, really good to see you.
It's great to be here, Viv.
Thank you so much. I'm really excited to have our chat because, wow, I mean, you have been through such a journey and you've changed so much. What is the greatest part about your life now, do you think, compared to where you were at before?
Yeah, absolutely. It is living in alignment, and it was kind of the holy grail for me and I knew that it was the thing that I wanted, needed, is what makes us healthy, whole human beings. And to get to a point where you are making decisions, living your life, and making choices and just reflecting out to the world what you feel on the inside and the sort of best version of yourself that you occasionally glimpse, but you're not always able to manifest. To feel that that's how I live my life, more or less all the time. I mean, there are moments, of course, where you kind of go, oh, that wasn't quite, but I'm still learning, and it's relatively early days, and I think it can only get stronger and better. But I certainly feel very conscious that I go through my days in a much more kind of aligned, conscious, present way, and that's just fantastic. That was what I wanted, and that is what I've achieved.
Oh, I love it. And just because if we look at you, you look successful, you look beautiful, you look confident, you look serene. That wasn't the Eugenie I met.
No.
Not that long ago.
No. So I think we had our first call in, I think it was kind of New Year's Eve, New Year's Day. It was the start of the year, and we're now 4 months later. So I feel very, very different in 4 months. Yeah.
So can you describe, for somebody who's not met you and probably wouldn't believe me if I said, oh my gosh, what we're seeing now is so different. How were you back then, do you think?
I was really broken. I was unhappy in my marriage, and was living in England away from my family and friends. We've been through COVID and 2 years of very, very severe restrictions. And I was holding down a job, managing my family, but I was in a very unhappy situation. And when I called you, I had managed, thank God, to get myself out of the house, and I'd rented a flat for 6 months. And it was incredibly difficult to leave the family home, but I said, I need some space. It's been like a pressure cooker. And I'd sort of, persuaded everybody, I think, that was a kind of reasonable thing to do. But I knew that when I got that space, I had to do the really hard thing, which was to make that separation permanent, and to, have some very difficult conversations around selling our house, around, getting divorced, around children. I had to really take that next step, and I just couldn't. I felt so lonely and isolated. I didn't feel I could do that on my own, and I just felt I wanted someone alongside me to do that. I mean, obviously one has the conversations on your own with people, and they're really hard, but knowing that I had a kind of anchor point for a period of time really gave me the confidence and courage to have those conversations, to move those things forward, and then a weekly check-in, and then just to feel that I was kind of part of something that was supporting me privately going through that, got me to a point where I was able to make those permanent, you have those conversations and make those changes. And in doing so, I, started to create the life that aligns with what I believe and what I hope and what I think is right for me. And so actually the great thing was that in seeing through those practical changes, I actually did the much more important job of aligning myself and creating, a life which is what I want. And so, if you'd said to me back then, what did I want? What I really wanted was to have some support making those changes. What I hadn't understood was how profound that would be in terms of the bigger goal, and that, to have all those things more or less in place. We're still kind of finding our way a little bit, but on the whole, and that's been in 4 months, and that's brought about, a change in my demeanor, a change in the way I'm looking at the world, change in, how interested I am in how I look, which was, 0 4 months ago. And now I'm kind of getting back to like, I put on a bit of lipstick. Oh, it makes a difference. So, yeah.
It really is huge what you've been through. You were navigating leaving a toxic relationship. You were navigating, as you said, the most difficult conversations, which needed you to show up fully for yourself, your child, and need strong boundaries to say, this is what I deserve, and not just take the path of least resistance and get walked all over again. How, that is a really short time. What you said, it was profound for you. What do you think's been the most profound part of being able to do that, I guess?
I think 2 things. One was a skill you taught me, or really encouraged me to properly cultivate, even though I'd sort of known that was probably the key, but you just drove it home. And that is this point about awareness, of hearing the voice. And it sounds perhaps quite a distance from, having a conversation about your divorce or whatever, the voice in your head, but it is profound, the influence it has. And just as an example, yesterday I was out shopping and I caught sight of my reflection in the mirror, and, I put on a bit of weight during lockdown, and, I'm not happy with that. But rather than, when I saw myself in the mirror, in the reflection, I didn't think, as I would have thought for the first 52 years and 9 months of my life, oh God, oh, you're awful, fat, overweight. I thought, look at you, you've lost 2 pounds this week, you're exercising, I like that top on you, you look all right, you're doing your best. And I absolutely had that thought. I was not repulsed by the sight of myself, as I normally am, repulsed, which is a horrible way to live your life. And it's because the voice in my head that finds me repulsive is, my mother and her disdain. So having the awareness of the voice in your head is profoundly liberating, because it means that you can hear your own voice, and your own voice gets stronger and louder, and your own voice is telling you healthy things and useful things to you. And having that voice kind of made loud and given, confidence, and become ultimately a permanent thing, then you can go through these difficult conversations without, when you say, I need this, and somebody says, well, you can't have it. And your mother says, well, of course you can't. Your mother's voice says, well, of course you can't have it. You don't deserve it. And you were stupid to ask for it. And you feel foolish. Whereas my voice says, well, I do need it actually. And I really wish you could give it to me. But if you can't, then I respect that. I need to find another way of having that. And then you walk away. So the awareness of whose voice is guiding you and who you're listening to is huge. And then the other thing that was really important to me was seeing you in the first instance, but other women that I met through working with you, modeling the sort of boundary setting and achieving goals and living life of alignment and feeling fulfilled and happy and being authentic, having that modeled for me by women who had the same, I've got plenty of girlfriends who are all those things, but they've always been those things. And it's, if I say to them, can you help me with this? They look at me like I've got a second head, as in, how can you not know this? How can this not be something that bless them? They're very fortunate. I haven't ever had a kind of peer group of women who, were modeling the changes and the kind of growth and development and strengths that I needed to apply. And I found it incredibly useful it was, profound to have that experience. And, so those 2 things was teaching myself a new skill and seeing other people who had been in similar situations making the changes that gave me the belief that it was possible. Those are the 2, I think, most profound things. But, there are other things. I think paying quite a lot of money for something was a really important thing, because it was, saying, I think it is, it sounds corny, like a Clairol ad or whatever it is, I'm worth it. But it's kind of like saying I am making this significant investment in myself. It was pretty powerful, that too. So yeah, those are the things I think.
It's right. It really is equal to the depth of the pain you've been in for years and years and years and years, and the level of the outcome we can get you. Because
yeah, and I think that's a really interesting thing, because I was thinking, sorry, just before we're talking now, I was thinking, actually, in some respects, I feel grateful that I have had the opportunity to go from being in such a bad place to being in this good place, rather than, you know, a lot of my girlfriends who, as I said, have, or people who have just always had it. Yeah. And, you know, lucky them, they've had, you know, more straightforward lives, quite likely, but they don't have this kind of incredible feeling of like, oh my God, which is the sort of, you know, that's the compensation for the pain, is when you get through it, the relief at just living a healthy, normal life, you know, one hopes, is immense.
Not even just a normal, healthy life. Your eyes have been open to so much more possibility. I'm the same. I see people who've not been through that level of trauma and realized, I'm worth this. I'm going to put the work in. I'm going to do this. I'm really grateful, perversely grateful.
I think it's a gift. I think that's a, you know, if you know, that's a sort of part of the healing process, I guess, is to see it as a gift, because God knows when you're in the thick of it, the last thing it feels is a gift. You know, it just doesn't. It's terrible. And you just think, how could I have, you know, led my life so disastrously, made terrible choices? How did this happen? How am I, you know? But, you know, it really is, you know, and I would say this to anybody, your trauma really is a gift. And you see it in people who've been through things infinitely worse than, you know, what I've been through, or you've been through, in the sense that, you know, they've survived Auschwitz, and, you know, but this idea that trauma can be this kind of, it's almost a biblical term, it can be a salvation in many respects, is something to really grab onto, I think.
What I'd love to talk about now, because it's not just about you and a toxic relationship that you're breaking free from. The work we did ripples out. You know, you asked for a pay rise you would never have dared ask for while we were in the middle of the program. Your relationship with your son. Can you tell me about some of the ripple effects in other areas of your life?
Yeah, so absolutely. The pay rise was a great thing. I was in the middle of the sort of program, and just all of a sudden, you know, I'd spent the whole of lockdown looking after. I run a small charity, and I'd suddenly thought, hang on, you know, everybody's getting pay rises, everybody's getting flexible working arrangements, everybody's getting everything except me, and I'm kind of going through a marriage breakdown. I'm, you know, trying to bring up children. I'm, you know, working my butt off. And I just thought, hang on, this is crazy, you know. And I just wrote to my chair and I said, you know, I know it's a little bit out of the sort of timetable of these things, but everything's out of the timetable. I've made exceptions for everyone. I really feel like I need a salary increase. And he just wrote back and said, did you have a number in mind? Which is quite, and I went away and did that thing of, you know, thinking, oh my God, I can't possibly ask for what I really think I deserve. And I went and had a cup of tea with a colleague, and he said, well, I think you should ask for this. And I said, I can't, you know. And he said, for God's sake, you can. So I said, oh, all right. So I came back and I just typed the number in and hit send, you know, and they came back with actually £2,000 more than I had asked for. So, you know, not only did I get my wildest outside can't look number, I got more than that. So that was a great thing.
And I say to every woman, you invest in yourself. It feels scary because it's that, you know, you're investing money into yourself. A lot of people never even buy themselves a cup of coffee when they first meet me. And I always say to them, it will come back to you. Because
it's really true. You know, I'd stop buying clothes for myself. I'd really, really put myself so far down the list out of this sort of misguided view that, you know, sort of somehow sacrificing myself was going to make, that was the key to solving my problems. But it wasn't. And, you know, I'm never going to be a flagrant person, I hope, you know, it's not my nature, but, you know, arguably you know, I've earned back the first £2,000 I invested in myself in that increase that I wasn't expecting. So, and that was, you know, that would not have happened had I not been in this program. So at that time, I'm sure I would have at some stage, but that was really important. And, you know, sort of the other things that really mattered to me, you know, and one of the things that really drew me in when we had our first conversation was, you know, I recognized that even if I was finding it hard to make these changes for myself, because I was so, you know, in the habit of sacrificing myself and I shouldn't be happy, I'm not doing that for my children. It's particularly my son. I'm not sacrificing him. And I realized that living a life where I wasn't fulfilled, where I was compromising myself, where I was not being aligned to things that my values and things that mattered to me, that was making me unhappy, which was not good for him, but was also not modeling the sort of behaviors that I wanted him to have in the future, and which I wanted him to look for in other women. You know, my greatest wish is that my son has a happy, fulfilling life with a relationship that fulfills him. And so, you know, I better get out there and show him what that looks like, because otherwise he will not learn these important things. And if that means a respectful separating from his father, then I'm afraid that's what it's got to do. And I really emphasize the word respectful, because that's the next thing, is I can see that, and this is amazing to me, but actually my relationship with my you know, to-be ex-husband is infinitely better. Infinitely. And he is changing. We are in a different place. He is respecting me. It's had a very positive impact on him. And, you know, I think one of the things I've learned is I can't change him. I thought I could. I thought if I could change myself, I could change him. I can't. And actually, you know, I was getting in the way of his sort of recovery, as it were. It's much better for me to improve, you know, work on myself. And actually, I can see it is infinitely better for him. So I feel actually that's not my goal, is his, you know, his recovery. But if it's a byproduct, I'm very, very happy for my son's father to be in a better place and have a happier life. That's in everybody's interests. And, you know, I was with him for 15 years. So it's I don't sort of want him to go down. And if he can sort of be okay, great.
And I can tell you this because I have proved that just by doing that and saying, I want to model better and I want to model healthy relationships to your children, that is what he will go and do. And you break that cycle. It's the most proudest thing I've ever done in my life. And my sons have beautiful relationships. One's married, and honestly, it's the most healthy, perfect. It's like my husband and him. I mean, it's beautiful. So, and
that was something else that really drew me into you, was that you'd had that experience with your children where it had, you know, you could show me that was something. And, you know, you don't want to hold your children up to having to be perfect for the rest of their lives, so that, you know, but, you know, and people are people and things may happen, but just knowing that you can, because, you know, you really do worry. You think, oh my God, if I split up from my child, you know, from my husband, you know, is my child going to become a drug addict? Am I going to, blah, blah, blah. And it's completely the opposite. He's only 11, so let's cross our fingers. But I definitely feel much more able to guide him in a way to healthy outcome for him. And if he's not, again, that won't be my fault, and I won't be able to change him. And I have to stay in my lane and let him stay in his, and we'll see.
Brilliant. I'm so proud of you. I'd love to imagine what your life and this breakup and what you've had to navigate, what all that would have been like had you not gone through this program.
I think I was really, really panicked when I found you, because I'd done an awful lot of work, actually. And I think I should be, like, I think a lot of the women who you work with, it wasn't that this was entirely new to me. I'd been thinking about it. I had a very good couple of years of therapy a couple of years ago. I had got to a place where I was ready for this program. And I'd invested heavily. You know, I'd spent money on therapy. I'd spent money to move out of my house. I had invested quite a lot. But I was really, really so ground down emotionally, and so isolated and lonely. and really quite scared of my husband in a way that, you know, I now think that was, you know, and I remember you saying to me, Leanne was like smiling and laughing at the thought of being intimidated. And I'm in that place, really. I mean, I don't want to go back into conversations unnecessarily because I'm, you know, I think the memory is still a bit raw, but on the whole, I don't have that fear, which I was fearful of the aggro, my inability to withstand it. It was awful. And I really, I don't know how I would have navigated those conversations, the coming back, the money, the house, all these things, if I felt like I was kind of at a point where I was either going to, you know, end up in a, you know, having treatment for a psychiatric illness because the pressure was so immense, or being bundled onto a plane and sent back home to Australia to be with my family, which would have been a terrible thing for my kids to see me, you know. So I felt that the stakes were really high, but equally, I also, you know, I'm resourceful, and, you know, I found the right person at the right time, and, you know, I'm proud of that, and I'm proud of my ability to discern the right person for me, and to make the decision, which, you know, it wasn't, you know, it was a difficult decision and a big decision, but once I committed to it, I sort of knew, and things then, you know, things happened that were just not necessarily part of the program. We didn't always come and talk about every single thing, but I was on a kind of journey, and it had a sort of defined end point in that, you know, I think we worked together for 8 weeks, and I sort of knew, and that was a time frame. So it just go, and I also knew that when I got to the end of 8 weeks, I knew that actually it would keep on going, the reverberations, and of course they do. So it wasn't, and I would say this to anyone, it wasn't that on the end of the 8th week I felt, right, done, sorted, I'm okay, thanks Viv, you know. It wasn't. I was still only sort of, I mean, even on my last call, I was still feeling pretty heavy with it all, but I knew I was on a trajectory, and I knew that, you know, I'd got sort of 60% of the way, and the next 40% I kind of did my own, and, you know, I've had a break, I've had a holiday, I've, you know, had some reflection time, and it's just, I'm on that path now.
You have the skills now, you know what to do.
Yeah, I have the skills.
Yeah.
And it's that awareness, you know, it's that, you know, I know that, you know, I've just had a very toxic exchange with my mother, you know, which is where I think a lot of this stuff began, not to say all of it. And, you know, when I was in Australia, I had a very toxic exchange with her, which was really very, very, very painful. But for the first time, you know, and yeah, it's not an exchange that I haven't had many times before with her about different things. But I was just able to look at it and go, wow, that's your shit, and that's not nice, and that really hurt, and it still hurt, but I had a detachment from it, and it meant that I was able to the next day wake up, and I was bruised, but I was able to go, right, let's just keep going. She's an 80-year-old woman, she's not going to change, you know. So yeah.
It's profoundly healing, that separation, and knowing that's her shit, it's not mine, as you said.
Yeah.
And I choose to take it on for the rest of my life, or I can just say that's hers. I'm now separating, and I'm me. And I'd love to ask you, you know, you said you'd worked with therapists, and you said you'd done a lot of work. What do you think was the difference?
Yeah.
Working with me, and why did it sort of seem to stick better?
Yeah, I think that's because I've been thinking quite a lot about that. And I think that for me, and obviously it will be different for everybody, but for me, I think I wouldn't have had, in truth, the confidence or courage to reach out to you if I hadn't done the work with a therapist before. I think that got me to a place where I was able to take the next step. So certainly for me, it was an essential part of the journey. But the thing that was different was I really understand now, and I was starting to see, but I understand, you know, I'm not the first person to be in this situation. These are patterns of behavior that are very common, that we're increasingly seeing in the media, in popular culture, you know, and I was a part of, you know, patterns of behavior. And I played my part, you know, I had certain qualities that drew me to this situation. And being in a kind of specialist environment where that was the norm and that was something that we were all working from and understanding, that was the really important part for me. And I think it was just, it was just the specialist focus on that, the nature of that, the widespread nature of it, and understanding, those specific circumstances and situations that lead, I really do see that, my husband and I, we were in a sense equally culpable for, he was living out patterns that were the consequence of his experience, and I was living out patterns, and we just happened to have two patterns that gel and connect, and that bond formed, and it's very powerful. It happens, often. And so seeing that as a sort of norm and understanding that it wasn't that I was useless or hopeless or incredibly unlucky, or that he was some, uniquely heinous, dreadful person, just seeing us as two people with coping mechanisms that had a binding quality, an unhealthy binding quality, it just was just very liberating.
Yeah.
And the other, I really enjoyed being on the Facebook group with the other women. I found that really, really wonderful. The sense of solidarity and also that they were brilliant women. And it just made me feel, this isn't something that just kind of losers get embroiled in. It's actually something that, really high functioning, lovely, ordinary women get involved in.
Very positive space. It's not
very positive.
No one goes into a victim, as victims blaming exes. There's none of that, is there? It's really powerful.
There isn't, and I would have run a mile if I wasn't interested in having sort of. And then he said. I mean, of course, there's a little bit of that when we illustrate how we, navigated a difficult situation. But it was a space where women who were taking responsibility for their part and for their futures. And that's what I was interested in. So often, forums and stuff are just about negative blaming, and that doesn't serve anybody. It just creates negative energy in you, and it doesn't take you forward. And I wasn't interested in that at all. And that was, again, something that was very attractive to me. I wasn't interested in going down that path. I was interested in my own responsibility. And
important to me, and actually I'm very selective about who I invite in for that reason, because I want you to feel there's hope. I want you to feel inspired. I want you to see people smiling and moving forward. And let me just, to finish off, this is just so beautiful, and a lot of women like you must remember, it's a big decision to make. It's quite scary, but actually once you make it, it's the best thing that you could ever do. It's just that step is hard. What would you tell anyone who knows that they need to do something like this, but just is a little bit scared and wants to go back in their comfort zone?
I think that one of the things I would say is just what you said before, is you're selective. And I think if, you and I had a really good conversation before, you suggested that this would be, that I would be a good candidate, for want of a better word. We had a really good conversation, and I'd felt very understood, and your analysis of my situation was bang on. And for all there were kind of patterns and stuff, I felt you really got the measure of my particular circumstance, which is different to, a lot of other women you're working with, although the patterns are similar. And I really felt that conversation was really good, and that I was heard, and that you understood me, and that we had a connection. And there were things that were, I felt connected to you, we had things in common. And so when you said, I think you're a suitable candidate, I put a lot of store on that, that your assessment was that I was in the right place. I'd been entirely transparent with you about where I was at. So you had a really good understanding of my circumstances. And I actually, because the conversation had been so good, and because I had such respect for your analysis, I thought, if you're saying that I'm a good candidate, I have confidence, I believe you. And that's quite a big thing, because, I think most women who come to you probably have found, you on the internet, and there's quite a lot of people doing this kind of thing. And I recognize it's kind of a big thing to have a 45-minute call, whatever it was, with someone, and then, say, I'm going to pay you a lot of money and take a big risk and really expose myself. But I would say to someone who was wavering or thinking about it, that if Viv says to you, I think you're a good candidate. I don't think, you know, my experience has been that she's correct. And I don't think the space that you create with the group, I saw women in there that, you know, that you weren't carrying any passengers. It was all women who I think I could see were very likely going to make similar progress to me. I'm sure it's not 100% success rate, maybe it is, but I think it would be a very high success rate. And so my advice is, if Viv deems that you, having been transparent and open and spoken to her, you know, for a period of time, that you are in the right place, I would put a lot of store on her assessment and credibility, and say to you, I appreciate it might seem random and scary, and but really give that good consideration. Yeah, put a lot of store on that.
Well, thank you so much for that, and thank you so much for putting that trust in me, and because I've loved it. I really have enjoyed getting to know you, and I've enjoyed watching you step into this really aligned woman who's so confident now, who gets that pay rise, who models all this to her son. I'm so proud of you.
It's great. And you know, I've really enjoyed getting to know you. I really enjoyed getting to know the other women, and I really enjoyed kind of staying in touch through, you know, your posts, your Instagram posts, your emails, and it reinforces. And I think that's a wonderful thing, is it doesn't end with the program, because your voice is in my head, because I've done the work. These lovely reinforcement moments that just give me a little buoyant at the beginning of my day, and I see your smiley face, you say something of just wisdom, and I go, yeah, that's it, and it just all drops in. So I think it goes beyond, if you really want to embrace it, you can get an awful lot more from it beyond the sort of program. And I know you do other things as well, but that for me has been really wonderful, just to keep it going, to keep that energy alive in me.
And I do keep checking in. I've just checked in on a couple of clients from some time ago and got the most incredible emails back of how brilliantly they are still doing. So don't be surprised if I drop an email to you. How are you doing? I'm thinking of you today, because once you're in my life, you stay there.
Well, I'm very happy. I'm delighted to be there. You know, it's really lovely. And, you know, I wanted to do this because I want other women who are in similar experiences to have situations, to have the possibility of, you know, the healing and growth that I've had. Because, you know, I know how unhappy and sad and difficult and awful life is when you're trapped in these sorts of, it's a living hell, you know, it really, really is. And I actually felt that I had been in a cult, and actually in some ways I feel that I sort of have created my own intervention. You know, coming in here was an intervention to reprogram myself. And, you know, I just want other women who feel that they're in a situation which is so far removed from who they are, what they think, what they want, to have the possibility of reprogramming themselves and living a happier life.